You ever have one of those mornings where you walk into the shop, take a deep breath of that sawdust perfumed air, and realize you've spent 20 years doing things the hard way?
Is this about the time you tried to flatten a workbench with a belt sander and ended up with a piece of furniture that looked like a skate park?
That was a momentary lapse in judgment fueled by too much espresso and a deadline. No, I'm talking about the way the world is moving. I just saw the specs on the new ESAB Dueler, this handheld laser welder, and it made my old reliable MIG machine look like a steam engine sitting next to a SpaceX rocket.
A handheld laser welder. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie where the protagonist accidentally cuts his own legs off. Are we really giving the general public pew-pew beams for their car projects now?
It's not quite Star Wars, but it's close. This Dueler EHL 1500 is air-cooled, 1,500 watts, and it basically turns welding into a game of point and click. But the real magic isn't just the tech, it's the precision. Normally, when you weld thin stuff, the heat travels through the metal like a bad rumor at a Sunday brunch. It warps everything in its path. But these lasers, the heat stays exactly where you put it. You can weld a soda can to a battleship and not even singe the paint. It's making the line between guy in a garage and aerospace technician get very, very blurry.
Which is great until the price tag drops and everyone thinks they're a master fabricator overnight. But speaking of masters, I saw that post in the community about the industrial electrician who finally bagged his state master license.
No small feat. That's the black belt of the wire pulling world.
He mentioned something that sounded incredibly dry, but apparently it's the holy grail of the trade. Article 110 of the NEC. To a civilian like me, that sounds like a boring legal clause. To you, it sounded like he'd found the lost city of gold. Why?
See, most people look at the electrical code like a book of chores. But Article 110, that's the thou shalt not be sloppy chapter. It's the foundation. It covers everything from how much space you need in front of a panel to making sure you aren't putting a copper lug on an aluminum wire and creating a chemical fire.
So it's the difference between the lights turned on and the house won't burn down in 3 years?
Exactly. Being a master isn't about knowing where the wires go. It's about understanding the why behind the safety. It's moving from the guy who follows the blueprint to the guy who tells the architect why the blueprint is a death trap. And honestly, the paycheck reflects that shift in responsibility.
Speaking of paychecks, can we talk about the maker mogul side of things? Because I see a lot of people in our forums making beautiful furniture, but then they sell it for like $50 and a sandwich.
It breaks my heart, Alex. I've seen guys spend 40 hours carving a live edge walnut slab only to sell it for the price of the lumber because they're afraid to offend the customer with a real price.
You mentioned a new gold standard formula for 2026. Break that down for someone who failed 10th grade math.
It's simpler than a birdhouse. Take the cost of your supplies, every screw, every drop of oil, every board foot, add the value of your time, then multiply that by 2. That's your wholesale price. If a shop wants to carry your stuff, that's what they pay.
Okay, but I'm selling on Etsy or at a craft fair. What then?
Then you double it again for your retail price.
Wait, double the double? People are going to think you're delusional.
That's what people said when I started charging for shop overhead. But look, if you don't account for your marketing, your electricity, and the wear and tear on your tools, you aren't running a business. You're sponsoring a very expensive hobby for a stranger. If you want to hit those $89 plus price points, you have to stop thinking like a tinkerer and start thinking like a brand.
I guess if you're making something like modular outdoor kitchen components, the high profit niche you flagged, you can't really afford to wing it on the math.
Exactly. People are obsessed with those built-in outdoor kitchens right now. There's the scratch coat method where you build the frame, slap on a base coat of mortar, and finish it to look like high-end masonry. It looks like a $10,000 job, but a smart DIYer can knock it out for a fraction of that.
Speaking of knocking things out, can we talk about the absolute unit of a workshop someone just finished? 40 by 64 feet? Tiger, that's not a shop, that's a hangar. You could park a small fleet of Cessnas in there.
I'm not saying I'm jealous, but I did spend 20 minutes this morning moving my table saw just so I could open my garage door. A space that size changes your soul. You stop thinking about how do I fit this project and start thinking about what's the biggest thing I can dream up.
But does a bigger shop actually make you a better maker? Or does it just give you more room to hide your mistakes?
You've caught me. A bigger shop just means more corners to pile up the offcuts I'll definitely use someday but never actually touch. But honestly, whether you're in a hangar or a closet, it's about the jig. That's why I love that Craig Edge challenge. It reminds us that a $50 guide and a circular saw can produce edges as straight as a laser, if you know what you're doing.
So, what's the big takeaway for the TigerDen family today? We've got lasers, we've got electrical codes, and we've got doubling the double on pricing.
I think the lesson is that the manual is always being rewritten. You can't just rely on the way your dad did it, but you also can't just buy a fancy laser and call yourself a craftsman. You have to bridge that gap.
Be the guy who knows the old code but isn't afraid of the new laser.
Exactly. Value your time, respect the physics of the trade, and for heaven's sake, don't be afraid to charge what you're worth. If you're putting your heart into a piece of steel or wood, that's a premium product. Stop pricing it like a bargain bin find.
I'll remember that next time you ask me to help you move a lathe for the experience.
Hey, the experience is priceless, Alex. But seriously, whatever path you're on today, whether you're chasing a master's license or just trying to get a straight cut on a 2x4, just keep your eyes on the details. The difference between it'll do and it's perfect is usually just 5 more minutes of patience.
And maybe a handheld laser.
And maybe a handheld laser. Stay gritty, folks. We'll see you in the shop.